baby, we are gonna get into the THICCCCCCC of it. And for those of you who are not hip enough to know, that's the thick of it. And we are here today with Scott D. Clary. Welcome to the HackerNoon Podcast, Scott. Thank you very much for joining.
What's going on? Thanks for bringing me on. I appreciate it.
And of course, this is your host, Amy Tom. Thank you for joining.
HackerNoon Podcast.
So today I wanted to bring Scott on the podcast to chat a little bit more about one of the stories that he wrote for HackerNoon. For those of you who are not yet familiar, we are running a Meet the Writer series where we want to hear from you, the writer, the contributor at HackerNoon, on your background, on why you write, on what you write about. And so let's get into it, Scott, the thick of it. Tell me, how long have you been writing for?
I've been writing for a long time, not always newsletters and blogs, but I've been in sales and marketing. So I don't know, 10 plus years, some iteration of writing. Now, not all of that was for my own brand, right? Like, obviously understanding how to write really good copy, to get emails open, to get, landing pages to convert was something that I was always focused on. And then something that I always did to build my own brand was to create website, blog, write, contribute. So that's been about 4 years now where I've been writing for myself. So putting out sales and marketing, entrepreneurship, startup blog pieces on my own site, started a newsletter, speaking about startup, basically growth stories and breaking down case studies of startups and how they sort of achieved what they've achieved. About 4 years now.
Okay, cool. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about writing and this Meet the Writer series is I want to know why you write.
So I write because I'm trying to find the best possible way to communicate and build an audience around what I care about. So I care about sales, marketing, startups, entrepreneurship. That's sort of been my core, what I've worked in, what I've worked around in my professional career, my 9 to 5. So if I want to build a brand around myself, I have to think of a medium that communicates what I know. And there was sort of two. There was writing blogs or newsletters, or podcasting and creating sort of thought leadership content through audio and video.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And let's talk about some of the stuff that you write for. So on HackerNoon, at least, you've got about 20 articles, 20 stories that you've written. Which one was your favorite?
Which one was my favorite? I enjoyed the one about Mike Bloomberg and how he basically sold the idea of the Bloomberg terminal and built the Bloomberg terminal and took that to market. I thought it was an interesting story that I don't think is a traditional startup story. And obviously people know him now as a billionaire and the presidential candidate, Mike Bloomberg, and not like entrepreneur Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting story. Obviously, every story that I write and every case study that I break down, I like the story because it's like a startup success story, really. So it's hard to pinpoint one because there's definitely learnings in every single one that an entrepreneur who's just starting out could learn from. Everything from their sales strategy, marketing strategy, growth strategy, struggles they've encountered along the way. But I thought the Mike Bloomberg one was really cool. So.
Yeah. I love how you break down the strategy and the founder stories of these people and what made them successful. One of the articles that I remember editing for you was the OnlyFans one. Yes, yeah. Of course. I edit all of the articles. The OnlyFans one, which was so interesting because coming back around to when the OnlyFans scandal kind of happened, I was like, I remember Scott's article about how OnlyFans got started and how the founder was like, oh no, now we need to take off the adult content from the site.
So that happened right after I wrote that article. And I was like, the whole
what? That doesn't make any sense because his whole story is about how he wanted to make a platform for adult content. So I was like, what?
So he tried that multiple times and failed, and just sort of combined all his entrepreneurial lessons into the final iteration, which was OnlyFans. But that was really what allowed him to succeed. It was that he was basically serving an underserved market. And then, but you saw the reaction. So I released this article because I did the research and then wrote this article out. And then it was like 2 weeks later when the OnlyFans said that they were no longer allowing like adult content on the platform, and like global backlash. Like everybody was like, this is the dumbest decision you could ever make, because that's half the reason why he was successful. It was serving an underserved market. And then all of a sudden he just became like another Patreon.
Yep.
Versus,
and then he was like, oh, haha, JK. Yeah. We are actually going to allow adult content on the site still. And then I was like, wow, could have seen that one from a mile away because Scott D. Clary's article told me so.
Yes. Well, I appreciate, you're very kind. I'm sure a lot of people could have seen that from a mile away, even if they didn't read the article. But yeah, you listen, if you develop that loyal customer base, like OnlyFans did, it's pretty dumb to just pivot completely, especially because I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 90+% of the creators on OnlyFans are adult content. So imagine, this is like to draw the analogy or to put it in perspective. This is like when Mark Zuckerberg was starting Facebook, it was just targeted towards like higher education, right? Like all the colleges. So that's like saying like, in the first 6 months of Facebook, no more college students are allowed on Facebook. Like quite literally, that's the same thing that he was doing. So it's
exactly. And then when you built that brand so strongly too, it's like you can't pivot off of that.
No,
you can't pivot to target other creators after your OnlyFans. Excuse me, that's not a thing.
No, I think that was silly. I think founders also have to appreciate like where they came from and what made them who they are today, and keep serving that community.
Yeah. So how do you decide what startup story you're going to cover?
So I really just find companies that I like, companies that I found interesting, companies that I've heard about in the news, companies, also, to be quite honest, companies that have information about them out there. Like, of course, like it's easy to say like, okay, I want to break down Snowflake's IPO or Tinder or OnlyFans, but it's because they have a lot of information out there. So what I do is I basically combine a founder origin story with my background as a sales and marketing person, understand what that founder or that person did to get to where they are today, and try and break down those lessons. Usually it's from like the lens of like a sales and marketing perspective, but realistically, like most of the companies that I do case studies on, like all that information is already out there. Like when a company IPOs, when a company is OnlyFans, when a company is Tinder, when a company is, well, if the company is Bloomberg and Bloomberg Terminal, there's a lot of interviews. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of it is just finding out information, picking out the relevant points, and then adding my context and my lens onto it so that somebody who is like an entrepreneur trying to grow a business can learn from somebody who's done it before. And that's what I really try and teach over when I do these studies.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned in your article, your Meet the Writer article, was about how much time it takes you to write a piece, which I think that a lot of people don't really realize, like how much time and effort goes into writing content. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm very specific about when I like to write, because if I don't block time off to write, it could take longer. So I think I put about 6 hours to write an actual piece. If I'm not focused on it, and I do this on Sunday usually, when I time block some time to actually do the research and then write out a piece. If I don't focus, it can take much longer than that. But keep in mind what I am researching. This is, so say 6 hours for, I don't know, about like, 700-ish words. And I'm also coming from an area of expertise. So the strategy component where I break down like the strategy, I know that like the back of my hand already because I've already executed the strategy. So I can read through the lines as to what this founder did at this stage to sort of, attract more customers or grow, or go into different markets or to sell a product, to take the product to market or whatever. I already kind of can see through that. So that doesn't take a lot of effort, but a lot of it is just research, finding the right information, compiling sources, double checking that the information that's out there is real, that it's, that this is all accurate. And then honestly, it's just like getting into some sort of flow state, cutting out all the distractions and actually just writing for about 3-4 hours, doing a couple rounds of edits. But this is like, I'm not a trained writer by any means. This is just sort of my process because I've learned what works for me. I cannot write during the week because even though I think I can write, when I look at that piece, like the next day, it's horrible. It's full of it's full of spelling grammar. Some of the sentences don't quite make sense. So I need to be like really, really isolated to write properly and to write good stuff and to make sure that it's valuable too, because it's not just writing things that are already out in the world. It's about providing some insight and some context so somebody can learn from what someone else has done. And I think that for me takes a lot of focus. So I've tried to write after I'm done work for the day, sit down and write while I'm in front of the TV watching Netflix. It's like all garbage out at that point. So that's why I try and time block on my weekend to get as much done as possible. Okay.
And you have a 9-to-5 outside of your content engine, right?
Yes, I do. Yes. So do you want me to go into that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I still run a sales and marketing team. So for the past 2.5 years, my whole career, I started off in sales, moved into sales leadership, moved into sales and marketing leadership. For the past 2.5 years, I have basically acted as CRO for an early stage startup. We were just acquired about a month ago. We were doing SaaS products for broadcast. So we were selling anything from audience engagement when you're like running say, for example, American Idol's on TV and they're asking you to vote on your favorite singer. That would be our software, running behind the scenes. So brought that to market and then we were acquired. I basically do everything from jumping on calls to building a strategy to hiring an onboarding sales team to hiring an onboarding marketing team. And now since we've been acquired, I basically act as leader of a small little innovation unit within Grass Valley, meaning that I still have my team I have my team of developers. I have my small little sales team, but since we're required now, we have a whole bunch more resources. So any new products that come out of my little development team, I'm responsible for training the larger Grass Valley sales force on our products, building out a take to market strategy, helping find product market fit for our products. And then I have a revenue bucket for my products that I'm responsible for. So that's my 9-to-5.
Yeah. Okay. So that kind of career path seems like it perfectly set you up to run the Success Stories podcast. Was that on purpose or did that happen kind of accidentally?
Yeah. No. So what do you? Well, I started it on purpose. Like,
yes.
I definitely started on purpose. I don't think the success that I've seen with it was on purpose, but I didn't really know what I was doing when I first started. But like most things that I've done for my own brand, like writing, I have a newsletter that I put out. I have the podcast that you just spoke about. All that was just done knowing that I needed to have those things and I wanted to communicate and build audiences. And that in my mind was the best way to build those audiences. So I knew that if I wanted to build a brand around myself, meaning that I wanted to be invited to speak on sales and marketing things, I wanted to jump on podcasts like this, I knew that I had to do that by creating assets that other people would consume, that would get to know me and build communities with those assets.
Right.
So
you're becoming a thought leader on the subject.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you do that?
Reach out. Yeah.
How do you do that? You have to start a podcast. You create content that, gives you a voice that allows people to consume who you are and what you know. And then over time, you build your little tribe of people that really like your message and what you put out there. So yeah, started it full well knowing that was something that I could use to build my own brand. And yeah, that was purposeful.
Yeah. So you've got your 9-to-5, you've got your podcast, you've got your writing. Do you sleep?
Not much.
Do you relax?
Not often. I should more, but not often. But now, so, it's a good point because if you're going to start something, you have to have a process for it to be successful. There's been times where it's like I wake up at 6 and I'm working till like 5 or 6, and then I'm doing side hustle stuff till like 9. And I don't have kids yet, so that's going to be an issue when that happens. But I think that part of what I've learned over the past 2.5 years. So I started this personal brand stuff Around the same time, I was hired on with Excitem, the company that I was speaking about earlier that was just acquired by Grass Valley. I started that, and when I first started, it was just an absolute shit show. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to, record a podcast and produce a podcast and upload it without spending a billion hours on it. I didn't know how to write a newsletter every single week. I missed weeks. I missed a lot, and I was just trying to figure out a process. So you learn different tools, you learn different workflows. Now I've hired people to help out with the show. So I have somebody who helps with all the editing, all the production of the show. That was me day one. But for me, it was all about building a process that allowed me to do it. So time blocking time to create the assets, time blocking time to post and distribute. I spoke about the fact that I set aside time on Sunday to actually write. That wasn't always the case. And that's why I've only now been able to put out about one piece per week, one significant piece per week, after I've blocked off that time on Sunday to just focus on writing. And then usually after that period of writing, that's when I'll actually do my podcast editing, review what my editor sent me, and then set up like the show notes and the social copy and the emails for the week. So I work quite a bit, but I mean, it's gotten better and it's not sporadic, and I really hold myself accountable to that. So if I'm not going to, if I don't block off that time on a Sunday, there's a good chance that my week would be a little bit chaotic, because then I would be trying to keep up and, still maintain that same posting schedule, that same content schedule that I would before. But for me, it's all about setting up a process that is, a process that, works with my schedule. And if you have that process set up, then all of a sudden, all this extra side hustle stuff, all this content creation stuff isn't as daunting. But I think people just sort of do it off the cuff, and they just sort of try and post a piece here and do a podcast and don't really have a plan for, okay, so if I record on Wednesday, when am I sending this to my editor, or when am I blocking off 2 to 3 hours to edit this show? How long do I want to spend posting this show? And you should have everything like that mapped out already, so that when you do create this, this because you do it yourself.
I do. But even hearing you describe it is overwhelming.
It is.
So
well, I'll tell you right now.
How do you not get burned out with this strict schedule?
Because I see, what? The reason why I don't get burnt out is because I see progress. I know that sounds so cliche, but I don't get burnt out because I see every single week more subscribers, more followers, more downloads. And I see that incremental growth. And I'm like, if I just maintain this, I'm going to get to where I want to be. If I maintain this, I'm going to get X amount of followers, and I'm going to be able to charge speaking fees when I go speak at conferences. If I get X amount of subscribers per day on my newsletter, I'm going to start being able to charge X amount of dollars for a sponsorship. Same goes with the podcast. I see the progress, and it's going in the right direction. And that to me is exciting.
Yeah.
Because that's where I want to go. I love doing this stuff. So as long as it's moving, it's the same thing as when you're starting a company. If you start a company and you have 0, monthly active users, but then, week 1, you have 5, and then, week 2, you have 10, and you can see that you're trending in the right direction. Maybe there's things you can do to tweak the growth so that you go a little bit quicker. But ultimately, that if you just last for 5 years, you're going to be able to sell this company for X million dollars, because you're going to eventually hit that critical point where you have X amount of monthly active users, X amount of MRR. And as long as you're trending in the right direction, I think that's really motivating. I think what happens is people start something, and when you start anything, that thing is going to feel like you're doing that thing into a void. When you're sending your newsletter, when you're putting out your podcast, when you're writing and you're pitching different publications, like for the first 3 months, 6 months, it's going to feel like nobody cares about you at all. It doesn't matter which platform, what you're doing, how great your content is, how great a writer you are, how great an interviewer you are. It's going to feel like nobody cares. But then once you get over that hump, and once people start to care, you have this flywheel of activity that's just going to start coming your way. And I think that's probably I'm like getting like shivers, like thinking about it, but like, it's like the most exciting thing. And like, you ask, how do you not get burnt out? Because you love doing it and you see the progress. And some weeks, yeah, for sure. Some weeks I'm like tired and like, I still miss like sometimes I don't send a newsletter, or sometimes I don't publish I try and publish podcasts on Sunday and Wednesday. Sometimes I don't publish it because just like life happened, and it was like end of like Q3, and I had to bring in some deals for like my actual 9 to 5, and like I was working overtime for work. I didn't have a chance to write, or I didn't have a chance to record or whatever. Like, it happens. But I mean, as long as you don't let yourself fall off in this content creator world, in this, then you're going to eventually end up in the right spot. I always challenge people, like, if you want to start a side hustle, I don't care if it's content creation, I don't care if it's writing, I don't care if it's podcasting, or if you want to start like a little side business, like, do it for 3 years. And then if you haven't found some traction after 3 years, then I'd say you can be like, okay, fine. Maybe this wasn't a fit.
3 years is so long to do something without traction.
But I don't think that would take that long, but I think that you should think like that, because I think it'll take about 6 months.
Yeah.
But I think that people think after 3 months, forget this. I have too much stuff on my plate. You know how many podcasts there are?
Wow. Okay. Call me out. Oh my God.
No, not you. But you know how many podcasts there are in the world that have like 10 episodes recorded? And that's it?
Okay.
Like, a lot.
Okay, excellent. I made it more than 10 episodes for my personal podcast.
These are not hard facts. I'm not pulling these data points from everywhere, but I'm sure if you looked it up, I wouldn't be so far from the truth.
Yeah.
A lot of people just give up. How many people do you see are posting, and then all of a sudden they don't post for like 6 months? Mm-hmm. They just give up.
Yep. I started a podcast in the pandemic because I was bored and I needed something to do. And I was like, cool, let's do podcasting. Everyone else is doing it. Why not? And I saw probably 4 or 5 friends who also started podcasts who I beat out, like, in the long run, just kept going. Like, people started dropping off and I was like, yeah, I'm still going. I got this.
Yeah.
Because it's the consistency too. Mm-hmm.
It's all about the consistency. And that's what you have to, that's what it takes to be successful in anything. But most people just don't want to put in the effort and continue to put in the effort again and again and again until they see those results.
Yes. But as a content creator, do you not get tired when you have made a piece of content, it gets consumed for 30 minutes, and then you got to do it again?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think it would be a lying if you said that you didn't sometimes get a little bit disappointed if like the thing that you worked so hard to create didn't hit. Now, I think that you have to focus less on that and more on the long term. Like, I really just believe you just can't focus on the misses.
The one content piece. It's going to be
more than one.
Okay.
It's going to be more than one that's going to miss.
You can't focus on the result of one piece. You have to focus on your results overall, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the only way to do it, because if you can optimize. So if you can optimize in the micro, you can optimize in the piece by piece, and you can test different things, and you can test, how you structure an article. You can test how long you want your article. You can test which topics you discuss, and maybe you look for micro improvements, but also, like, realistically, there's other factors that you'll never be aware of that could impact whether or not your article hits. Like, maybe you just have the right amount of keywords in it and Google picks it up, and then all of a sudden that's going to draw some traction, even though the actual content was not much greater than what you put out last week. But I think that you can sort of try and test and optimize, but realistically, you look at trends. You focus on the macro, you look at trends, you look at long-term growth. And if you're trending in the right direction, if you're getting on an article more people reading it, or on HackerNoon liking it or whatever week over week, or if you're looking at the traffic that's hitting your website, if you're just regular blogging and you see the traffic picking up, month over month, I think that's indication that you're trending in the right direction. And I think that's what people have to look for versus, okay, I put out an article or I tweeted something and it got 0 traction. I also think that people should always be not only just creating, but I also think people should be looking to people who have created before for clues as to what good looks like.
Yes.
I don't believe that you have to reinvent the wheel. Like, I speak about, not focusing on the micro, focus on the macro, focus on long-term trends, but I also look for people who have done that thing before. So I look for people who I like their newsletter. I look for people who I like their podcast. I look for people that have great Twitter followings, great Instagram followings. And I just figure out what they do well and model my stuff after them. And I provide my own lens and, I talk about my own stuff, but realistically, for newsletters, I love the First 1000 and I love Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think those are great newsletters. For podcasts, I look at, a good podcast that used to be similar to what I do was like London Real. Now he's more focused on crypto and stuff like that. But he was for a long time just interviewing incredible people. Another podcast would be like a Tim Ferriss is a great business type interview podcast. For every single social platform, I have somebody that I look to on how to create great content. So on Twitter, I look at Matthew Kobach or Jack Butcher. Instagram, I look at Chris Do. I'm trying to think what else. YouTube. It's actually YouTube's tough for business content, to be quite honest. But I just look at, YouTube's actually very tough for business content. But what's his name? I can't remember his name. He does a whole bunch of SaaS video content, and I had him on my show, and I'm blanking on his name now, which is horrible. I'll find it and I'll send you links to all these. Put it in the show notes. But you find your person on every platform that you're trying to figure out how to optimize your content on that platform, and look at how they've created content, because they're the experts and they're in that particular platform. And then you just find a way to take your content and to convert it into that style or that medium. That's really all there is to it. And I just keep, when I want to consume content, I'm looking for inspiration for me versus just mindlessly consuming. And then outside of that, I just focus on creating as much as I possibly can. Because even if you don't have someone to model content creation after, even if you're, for example, creating on TikTok and you don't have a great business person on TikTok before, because it's a newer platform and you're just trying to learn it yourself and you don't have anyone to look to help learn from, then I would say just start creating, and 50 pieces later, your content will be better than when you first started. I don't know how, but it will be. It just will be. Anyways.
Where is the coolest place that your writing and personal brand has gotten you?
That's interesting. The coolest opportunity that I never actually took on was actually a trip to keynote at a sales and marketing and tech conference in Morocco, which was just before COVID.
Cool.
I never actually went because it was COVID. COVID was just starting. Yeah.
That would be so
that was really
cool. Yeah. Ooh, Morocco.
Was very cool.
Fun. Yeah.
Outside of that, I mean, I've probably done, I'm sure, 50 to 60 different talks, podcasts in the past year. Are
you nervous about public speaking?
No, because I did it before. I did it before COVID. It's a little bit weird going out again after COVID when you've been doing just Zoom conferences and Zoom speaking things for the past, 2 years. But I think I still like the in-person because I think there's an energy to it that you can't replicate virtually. So growing up, I was very nervous about it, but I don't think that that's another thing too. I just don't afford myself the opportunity to think about what I'm nervous about. Something that just jump headfirst into stuff and figure it out as I go. But I think that's what you have to be This is not just a content creator thing. This is a life lesson.
Yeah.
You're always going to be nervous about things you've never done before. You just got to do it.
For sure. Except when you're public speaking, then everyone sees you doing it.
Yes. No, you're not wrong. But I mean, if you are that nervous, then just don't wing it. Then just prep.
Yes, that's true. What is the largest audience that you've publicly spoken to in person?
About 300.
Okay. Yep.
So It's not like a stadium. It was at a university. It was a startup club at a university, and actually at Laura
mine
University.
was about the same, but I really tanked it. It was real
Really?
bad. Yeah,
I didn't tank it.
Real bad. It was real bad.
No, I didn't tank it. I was a little nervous, but I guess, also I've only ever done things that I know and I love talking about. So like even now, when you ask me questions, I just start going off about stuff because I get so amped up about it. Like if I'm talking about stuff that I truly love, like I kind of forget that I'm in a room with a whole bunch of people and just start talking. Like the same conversation. If you approached me at a coffee shop and started asking me about sales and marketing and startups and whatnot, or content creation or whatever, I'd be talking to you the same way I'd be talking to a group, like a room of 300 people.
Okay.
Or 1,000 people or more, just because I get so excited about some of the stuff that I do talk about.
Yeah.
But
maybe it's also practice makes perfect, because
yes,
I am
sure.
really also excited about things, but I also cannot speak to 300 people. So maybe it's practice makes perfect.
I think practice for sure. I think if you do get nervous, and this is something that I have to do more of in terms of like, public speaking engagements, like find a way to categorize and sort of like list out that sequence of thoughts that you're going to bring to the table and present to people. Because I also know that if this is, I'm not a public speaking expert by any means, but I do know that if you do get excited about stuff, it's almost like you just try and tell everything all at once. And for you, it makes sense because you know how all those pieces connect in your head, but to actually teach someone something is very different than you just blabbing about it and being all excited about it. So I think that that's something that again, I'm not like a professional public speaker, but I think that that's something that would really help, is just to like list out your points at least ahead of time. So at least you have a flow to what you're speaking about, so that you can stay on track and you don't forget things and have to double back and say, and if you forget something and you didn't provide context for a point, I think that's important as well. But like you said, practice makes perfect. And, if you prep a little bit, it goes a long way. Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure that you're definitely a professional public speaker. If you have done 300 before, I'm pretty sure you're good.
I think the definition is if you get paid for it.
Paid?
And I haven't gotten paid.
You been paid?
No, I haven't been paid. So that's the definition of professional versus amateur, right?
Okay, that's fair. Well, soon. I have this. I've got a good feeling for you.
I appreciate it.
All right, cool. So what do you think you're going to write about next?
I don't know. I just wrote about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. And then I guess that's really topical now because she's going back to trial. Like she's going to, her trial's just starting now. So that was fun. And also a radio station contacted me out of nowhere on Twitter and asked me to speak about that story.
Fun.
Yeah. So that's good. That's cool. What am I going to write about next? I haven't decided yet, to be quite honest. Like in all seriousness, Sunday morning, I'll figure out something and I'll go into the rabbit hole.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's because again, I'm not, reinventing the wheel when it comes to these articles. For me, I think that there is, for creators, I think that something that you can do, which I've done is throughout, all the pieces that I've put out into the world, is understanding someone else's story and unpacking it, providing context, and then teaching it to your audience in a way that's digestible for them. I think that there's some value in that because all of this information is out there. And like you said, even when you put out your podcast, like you sometimes, it's a flash in the pan. It's like you spend 6 hours creating this content and all of a sudden it's forgotten. It's because there's so much information out there. And when there's so much information out there, we don't need it's always great to have great new information, but realistically, we need context and we need clarity on that information so that it actually provides value to us. And there's so much noise. I think that what I do with interviewing people, for example, I'm not telling anything new. I'm interviewing their story and I'm pulling out insights from them in a way that is digestible and hopefully actionable to somebody who's listening. These articles are the same thing. These are not startups that no one's ever heard of. To be honest, if no one's ever heard of them, they probably don't have a ton of lessons that they could teach you anyways, because they're not that big. I'm just trying to take a little bit of my career, take a little bit of my experience, find a great story, and teach that over to somebody who is trying to start their own thing or wants a little bit of inspiration. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's why I just figure out a company, start to do a little bit of research down the rabbit hole. I listen to a lot of interviews for these as well. So it's not just like reading research. It's like listening to interviews that the founders are doing, because they'll drop some of their tips and some of their strategies. And a lot of that stuff is just lost in some of these interviews. So I try and bring that to my audience as well.
Cool. What is your number one piece of advice for someone who is looking to use writing to build their personal brand?
My biggest piece of advice is to just write, as much as possible. Because the reason why a lot of people don't write is because they feel as though they have writer's block and they feel as though they're not creative. So if somebody wants to write, all you have to do is keep writing. And eventually you will get good content. You will start to, after you write a whole bunch of bad stuff, good stuff will start to come out. Also, I think it does help if you focus on topics that you're passionate about, because some of that passion will come through in your writing as well. But I think the best tip is, okay, so you want to use writing to reach your audience, time block like 4 hours. Don't let yourself get up, just focus on writing, shut off your phone. And after 4 hours, if you allow yourself to do nothing but write on a topic that you're passionate about, the end result of that 4-hour session will be something that I think will be valuable to your audience. I think that that's something that I think people give up too easily, even when it comes to writing, because they just sit down, they don't know what to write, just start writing. And what will come out of that session will be something that's useful. And that could be the first iteration of your newsletter, whatever that thing is. And use that process to consistently write out content that's good enough to put out into the world. And then after you have a process to consistently create content that's acceptable, then you can focus on improving it and optimizing it and getting feedback from your audience and seeing if they like it. So that would be my tip. Okay.
I love how you say that they only think they have writer's block.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's because people give up too easily, or they say they have writer's block before they even start trying to write. Like, it's incredible, like what will happen when you actually start. I have writer's block too for the first, like, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. But if you are distraction free, if you are just putting out content, if you are, if you want to use a pen and paper, that's cool. I use a laptop, but like the point is, like, if you actually start writing, you'll be very surprised at what starts coming out, and words will start to flow and everything will start to get a little bit easier.
Yeah. But I think a key word that you said there too is acceptable. An acceptable level of content. Yes. Like, just start. As long as it's acceptable, you can publish it. Go for it.
Agreed. And
wait, unless you're going to publish on HackerNoon, then make it really good.
Yes, exactly. Well, I would say that somebody who is writing on HackerNoon, the type of content that HackerNoon publishes is a little bit more technical sometimes, but I think people that are writing about that, they probably are more technical individuals that can speak to those types of topics. So I would argue that even if somebody who is a developer or an engineer or somebody that loves AI or blockchain or machine learning or robotics or any of these super niche topic, like, if they sit down and start writing some of the things that they've learned or they've done over the past week at their job, I would argue that's probably acceptable enough for HackerNoon.
Yes,
even.
It is. Please do. And also, it's like imposter syndrome too of writing. Like, I can't write about that. Everybody knows way more about that than I do. So, but no, you can write about that because somebody is going to know less than you do.
And that's actually another point too. I think that content in general or writing, it doesn't matter what you're trying to create. I think that when you document what you learn and you document your journey and you document the things that you have to learn, that alone could be great content.
Yes. like your journey to learning, it could be good content. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because if you're just documenting what you're dealing with on a day to day in an environment that's relevant to your audience, I think that alone is useful. Like there's times where I've just gone and done quick little, like I've never translated this into like actual like written content, because I try and be like a little bit more, like I have like a certain style that I like to do for my written content, but I'll go on Instagram and I'll throw up like just like an Instagram story of me just talking about things that I was dealing with throughout the day and how I tried to come to some sort of, conclusion as to how to deal with this problem or that problem, or a thing that I picked up from one of the, someone on my team, and how to deal with that problem in the workplace, or, a problem that I have with the customer, or a leadership thing that I just thought about. Like, it's just things that I'm living. And that's hopefully stuff that if I'm experiencing it and I'm learning from it, that can be something that can, first of all, just help build a little bit of your brand and humanize you a little bit, because you're also learning, but it'll also hopefully be helpful for even one person that sees it. And they'll be like, yeah, I thought about that particular problem, at some point in my career. I'm glad that, Scott spoke to this. If he does a lot of stuff like this, I want to become part of his tribe. And that's how you build a tribe. You don't build a tribe only speaking to your community. You build a tribe as part of your community. And I think that if you have those moments where you aren't 100% perfect, and you speak about the process, and you speak about learning, and you speak about growing as an individual in your own right, I think that helps build a tribe as well, because it's not just me teaching everything. It's me trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah. Yes. I love that. Okay, amazing. What a beautiful note to end on. Okay, Scott, where can we find you and what you're working on online?
You can find most everything. So I have a website, so scottdclary.com. You can also find me on social, and like any social is at Scott D. Clary. If you want to check out my writing, hit up HackerNoon. I'm pretty sure I'm at Scott D. Clary on HackerNoon as well. I tried to make it the same across everything. So you can find all my business case studies on HackerNoon there. Or if you want to just connect with me on social, at Scott D. Clary anywhere.
Amazing. I will put all those links in the show note. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining the HackerNoon Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode of the HackerNoon Podcast, don't forget to like it, share it, subscribe it, do all the things. I love you guys so much. And also, you can find HackerNoon on socials as well. LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at HackerNoon. Connect with us. We love you. Anyways, stay weird, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye-bye.
HackerNoon Podcast.